What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here from CLNS Media, live from Radio Row at the 2025 NFL Combine, and I am joined by colleague Mike Petraglia of the Bengals beat. But you originally were a Patriots reporter, so we go through this new regime, right? Mike Vrabel's back in town. Josh McDaniels is back in town. Now, Vrabel in a very different role. Now he is the head coach after a year of Drake Maye, and Josh McDaniels back as the offensive coordinator, but said in the offseason he spent time kind of away, learning from different systems. So I'm curious, as someone who has experience covering these guys, what should fans expect? And maybe from your perspective, what could they improve on in their latest tenure in New England?
Look, Taylor, I think a lot of people sense already that Mike Vrabel is going to be no nonsense, right? But he has an edge to him. Like he did as a player, he wanted always to keep his teammates on the edge of their seats. He wanted to keep them ready to play, ready to compete. And I think he's going to be that way as a head coach. He's not always going to be a tough guy. He's going to crack a few jokes. He's going to use sarcasm, but he's going to keep guys motivated. And I think his priority coming in is to make sure that everybody is committed to his process going forward. That, to me, is the essential mission of Mike Vrabel in his first offseason and in his first full season as Patriots head coach.
And then for Josh McDaniels, what did you like from him when he was here? Obviously, we saw so many iterations of the Patriots offense. Even when Brady left, he was able to have success with Cam Newton, with Mac Jones. So what are you expecting from Josh?
Getting the quarterback to understand precisely what needs to be done for each game plan going into each different defense he's going to face. And I think he is going to really like working with Drake Maye. From what I've seen from the outside, grant you, Drake Maye is somebody who has got a lot of physical gifts. And this is something that I think is new for Josh McDaniels, because with Mac Jones, he didn't have necessarily the gifts, but he had the attitude and he had the wherewithal to try and take the offense that Tom Brady was running for many years with Josh McDaniels. And, you know, he did an okay job, but I think with Mac Jones, he just got overwhelmed and it kind of caught up to him. I think with Drake Maye, it's going to be different, because I think Drake Maye has a more complete skill set physically, and I think Josh McDaniels is certainly going to try and play to that. What's going to be interesting is how much does Josh McDaniels grab from what he was doing with Tom way back in the Tom Brady system and try to apply that to Drake Maye, who's still entering his second NFL season. He's not Tom Brady with 15 years of experience facing NFL defenses. That, to me, is going to be Josh McDaniels' biggest challenge, is finding out what fits Drake Maye, and more importantly, what Drake Maye is most comfortable with.
And then Drake Maye, also the mental acuity is there as well, similar to a Mac Jones, where when he was handed the keys in 2021, they got taken away in 2022. He's like, wait a minute, I kind of liked having control of what happened. Cool to see Drake Maye with the physical talent also may be able to take control. Now, staying on the offensive side of the ball and Drake Maye, there's the debate of, do you get the left tackle or do you prioritize the wide receiver, right? And the Bengals, they were in this situation, right, with their draft pick. Now, it's not apples to apples, because the Patriots, there's not really that wide receiver, at least in the draft or even in free agency necessarily. We'll get more to that later. But from your perspective, do you think it's more important for a guy like Drake Maye, and with the Patriots where they are, to prioritize that franchise left tackle or that franchise wide receiver first?
Franchise left tackle, I don't think there's any question about that. The Bengals were kind of going through a revolving door in the first couple of years with Joe Burrow, and then they said, screw it, we've got to nail down the left tackle spot. They go out and get Orlando Brown Jr. from the Kansas City Chiefs. That addressed that spot for 3 to 4 years going forward. Okay. First round last year, they go with Amarius Mims on the right side out of Georgia. He had a terrific rookie season. A lot of room for growth with Amarius Mims. It's the interior line that the Bengals kind of struggled with last year, where a lot of pass pressure got to Joe Burrow. And if we remember the golden years of Tom Brady, what was most important? And Scott Peters, the new Bengals offensive line coach, told us today, the interior offensive line has to be firm. That is non-negotiable. And with Tom Brady in that offensive line back then, it was firm. And he could step up and be his sixth offensive lineman, if you will, step up in the pocket and make the plays downfield that he needed to make. The Patriots need to follow, I think, that same kind of blueprint. The key is, for the Patriots, is it better to get the best interior offensive lineman early in the draft and sign a left tackle or a right tackle in free agency, or vice versa? That is something, obviously, Elliott Wolf and the personnel staff with the Patriots have to figure out.
Absolutely. You brought up Scott Peters, offensive line coach, and Jerry Montgomery, defensive line coach, both now with the Bengals. Both spoke today. So I'm curious, from your perspective, a Cincy perspective, what did you get as your main takeaway from those guys?
Well, they are going into positions very different from what they experienced with Drake Maye as a rookie head coach in the National Football League. Those two coaches are going to an already established system with Zach Taylor entering his 7th NFL season, believe it or not. It's hard to believe.
That is really fast. It flew
yes,
by.
It is. But he's been in the NFL 6 years. He knows what he wants out of his coaching staff. He has an established offensive coordinator in Dan Picture, so that certainly will help Scott Peters. A lot of talk about the punching technique, the jiu-jitsu of Scott Peters.
The strike system, baby.
And he was certainly asked about that by all of us upstairs. I asked Scott Peters how he intends to get this passing game going, and in terms of the protection systems, and most importantly, and this was a big issue in New England, I asked Peters, how do you translate his technique, which he's very big on, obviously, and translate that into working well with the scheme that the offensive coordinator? If you have great technique, but it doesn't work well in the scheme, it does no good.
Exactly.
So that's what, obviously, Scott Peters has to spend the rest of the offseason talking with Dan Picture and company, getting them, on the same page. Defensive line with Jerry Montgomery, he's got to find ways to get more out of the interior defensive line. The big problem with that is he's working with 2 second-year players, and Chris Jenkins Jr. out of Michigan and McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M. A lot of talent there, a lot of potential, but those are two very – McKinley Jackson more raw than Chris Jenkins, but he's still got to find a way to motivate those guys to get more pass rush out of the interior Bengals defensive line, which they struggled with a lot last season.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like either coach was in a great position to succeed last year with Scott Peters.
No, they weren't, clearly.
Right,
and I think Robert Kraft acknowledged that when making the coaching change with Drake Maye. Gerard was not in a position to succeed, and you can blame that on ownership, you can blame that on the front office, you can blame that on not having the right players, but that was the reality of the situation. And, the Crafts made the decision to go in a different direction and go with a head coach they're very comfortable with.
Absolutely. Now, I think we've whet everyone's palates enough. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. Tee Higgins, what everyone's been asking about for over a year at this point. Now, personally, I started to kind of get myself off the Tee Higgins potential pathway when he changed agents, when Joe Burrow put his foot down and said, nope, I want to retain my guys. So everyone wants to know, are they going to tag him and then trade him? There's a lot of different scenarios for the Bengals. What do you think is going to happen? What are the chances that he ends up leaving and maybe becomes a Patriot?
Okay, I don't see the Bengals right now tagging him until they get to the deadline of March 4th, I believe it is. But certainly there have been reports out there. A good colleague of mine, James Rapine of SI.com, says Bengals' intention is to use that tag to precipitate a long-term deal getting done. This is not Tee Higgins being tagged last offseason. Completely different circumstance. This is more to make sure the Bengals are protecting their negotiating rights in the event that talks with Rocky Arsenault, the agent that Tee Higgins has, same agent as Jamar Chase, make sure that the Bengals' bases are covered. But if you don't have to work with the tag and can get the deal done, like Duke Tobin, the director of player personnel, mentioned on Tuesday, then they won't do that. And I think at this stage, the Bengals sense that they are going to get Tee Higgins done. It's a matter of working out the structure. It's a matter of working out the guaranteed money. Tee Higgins is going to come in at 29 to 30 million AAV, probably guaranteed money between 80 and 85 million. If you're wondering about Jamar Chase, definitely 40 million a year. You're looking at 4 years minimum, 160 million. That would certainly shatter the Justin Jefferson deal. Guaranteed money, 105 to 110 million guaranteed. Those are the ballpark figures, and I think both sides are in the same ballpark in terms of it. The deals are going to get done.
Kind of back up the Brinks for the big three. Unfortunate for Patriots fans who wanted that extra receiver. Really,
there
that
are
big
other
playmaker.
Options out there, Patriot fans.
Exactly. There's other avenues, trade and things like that. But if it's not going to be Tee Higgins from the Bengals, there are some pretty interesting names that could potentially hit the market. So if the Patriots are looking for a consolation prize out of Cincy, not necessarily a wide receiver, but who do you think fans should keep their eye on?
Well, there is one possibility that could come back that Patriot fans know, and he didn't have a great experience there. Mike Gesicki. Joe Burrow wants tight end Mike Gesicki back in Cincinnati, but if he's not available, and you're talking about Josh McDaniels and a guy that's very comfortable, a coordinator in Josh McDaniels, very comfortable with 12 scheme.
Yep.
One running back, 2 tight ends. Gesicki certainly was suited perfectly for Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. DK Metcalf's another name out there that has been tossed around that I think would be a great fit for Drake Maye downfield, a 50-50 ball machine. He can moss anybody with the best of them, and I think he would be a great fit for somebody like Drake Maye, long downfield target.
Unfortunately, the Patriots are not set on either side of the ball. They got issues on offense, but they also have plenty of issues on defense. Now, positions that they've emphasized, Mike Vrabel mentioned how important the nickel position is.
Yep.
Also, the interior, the defensive line in general. B.J. Hill, Mike Hilton, 2 guys that have kind of come on my radar and I'm pretty interested in. What do you think of them as potential fits?
So B.J. Hill certainly played very, very well when he had DJ Reader, and even going back a little bit with the defensive tackle with the Pittsburgh Steelers, name escapes me right now, but B.J. Hill was very, very good, very, very effective with the Bengals. Got signed to a new deal, but he could be available. And I think he would give you certainly some 3 technique versatility in the middle of the defensive line for the Patriots. And then Mike Hilton was one of my favorite Bengals to cover. Lou Anarumo took him off the field on third down situations because of the speed, and he was aging a little bit and had lost his step, and Mike Hilton acknowledged that, acknowledged as much. But he's a leader, and he plays one of the best tacklers on the team in addition to that. But he's also a leader, great communicator, and he certainly would be somebody that I think Mike Vrabel would love to have in that kind of position where you're not exposed that much. Certainly on third down you can be, but on first and second downs, great in tackling situations and great tackling in space.
I kind of like that Hilton fit potentially as an early down guy. Like we saw early in 2023 with the Patriots, they had Miles Bryant on early downs, another guy who didn't have great speed, but he was physical. And also I like Mike Hilton as a blitzer. Vrabel loves blitzing his slot guys. Maybe you draft a younger guy who can come in more of those passing down situations. Mike Hilton contributes on early downs. But
one of the best, by the way, in blitzing from that spot.
Yeah.
And he is, when he times it, he is one of the best blitzers in the National Football League, and that's one thing that Lou Anarumo, now with the Indianapolis Colts, did love about Hilton early in his time with the Cincinnati Bengals. He could bring pressure from different areas on the field. By the way, cleaning up, some house cleaning, Larry Ogunjobi. So it was Larry Ogunjobi along with DJ Reader and B.J. Hill. When the Bengals had those 3 in the middle of the defensive line, that's really when B.J. Hill really excelled.
Hopefully the Patriots could stock up the middle of their defense. Devon Godshaw is probably going to be traded. Christian Barmore, you don't know what's going to happen. Hey, maybe even Mike Hilton can help a little bit with the pass rush. Mike, thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Thanks, Taylor.